It's time for our weekly energy update with Dan McTeague, president of Canadians for Affordable Energy. All yours, Dan.
Well, hello, Julie. First week into March, and everyone is now looking with this warm weather as to what's going to happen at the end of the month. Not only do we see refineries coming back online, we also see the beginning of the switchover from winter blends of gasoline to summer blends of gasoline. So in the next 5 or 6 weeks, that could mean as much as a 6 or 7 cent a liter increase. But there's more. Of course, on the long weekend, Easter long weekend, coming up in about 3 weeks or so, we're likely to see some pretty significant jumps. But before I get to that, let's sort of just have a pan over what's happening across Canada, with Vancouver and Victoria staying in the 190, 189 range, and 184 in Vancouver. If you look at the rest of the province in the $1.70 range, not likely to change. The outlook actually doesn't look very strong at this point. Markets are still very nervous about strong demand through better employment numbers. And of course, that means no relief for inflation. Kind of counterintuitive when you think about it. Good news is actually bad news. Good news means more demand, but markets are treating it as if it's bad news and it'll weaken demand. Talk about a dysfunctional oil and gas trading energy market. For Alberta, of course, we've seen prices move up uncomfortably about 7 or 8 cents a liter. Folks, that's because we saw in Alberta gas stations offering fuel 2 or 3 cents a liter below cost for the past couple of weeks. I think they woke up, or their bank probably called them and said, you're selling gasoline and you're losing money. You better raise those retail margins. So $1.44 to $1.48 is what we're seeing from Edmonton to Calgary. Saskatchewan, never much of a move there. You're still in the you're roughly in the $1.49 to $1.50 range. Some are as high as $1.52, but $1.46 is probably the sweet spot right now for Regina, Saskatoon. And of course, for Winnipeg, never moves, $1.33.9. And that means, of course, Ontario, which we've seen prices hug around the $1.50 range, won't change for next week. We're going to remain within these prices, $1.47 at the low end, in places like Toronto at the high end, $1.51. And same for Quebec, except for it's 12 cents higher with taxes. For the Maritimes, well, they saw a little increase in gas prices. Look for that to stabilize. Not much movement there this week. So for the Ides of March, this second week of March, it looks like we're going to be pretty quiet. And that's probably because it can be best described as the calm before the storm. Now, I mentioned a little earlier concerns about what's going to happen. On April the 1st, we are going to see the federal carbon tax hit every single province with the exception of Quebec, which has its own project. Gasoline will be going up net 3.3 cents a liter plus GST or HST. So depending on whether your province has GST, the increase will be in the order of about 3.5 cents a liter. For diesel, the price will be going up 4.01 cents a liter plus GST, so about 4.2 cents a liter. If, however, you enter the 13% and the 15%, as we see in Ontario and Atlantic provinces, then you're looking at gasoline prices moving up about 3.8 cents a liter. And of course, with diesel, you're looking at prices that are going to be moving up a lot closer to about 4.2 to 4.6 cents a liter. All in all, a representation of an even greater bite of fuel prices. And with that in mind, it's likely that the timing on that is going to be great. I'm looking at oil prices heading up a little higher. I'm also, Julie, looking at, that switchover, as I mentioned earlier, winter to summer gasoline. And with that, of course, we could be looking at yet further indication the federal government will be moving up a little higher on the clean fuel standard between now and January the 1st in provinces like Ontario, Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba. Look for that to increase by about 4 cents a liter. Bottom line, 2024 is going to be a lot more expensive than 2023. And unfortunately, at a time which many people are starting to feel the pinch, it's only going to make matters worse unless, of course, we're prepared to nix net zero and all the policies that have driven up the cost of living and obviously kept inflation top of mind for all of us. That's it for this week. We'll talk next week about what prices look like then, but get ready. Prices are going to start to rocket.